A win is a win, right? BYU basketball takes care of business against Arizona State, but there are still some concerning elements to this BYU Cougars squad. We're digging into it on a postcast edition of Locked On Cougars.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And as always, thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Special edition postcast here as BYU basketball takes care of business against Arizona State, gets the season sweep of the Sun Devils. It's kind of crazy to me to think that BYU and Arizona State played their first Big 12 game back on December 31st, and here we are, February 26th. Yeah, 26th today. Wow. Been a long time coming, but BYU gets the sweep all the same. Now, first thing out of the chute, I do not get this BYU basketball team's ability to shoot three-pointers like nobody's business, but then in equal measure, struggle at the free throw line. I have been in the media sphere for a long time, and there's a pretty strong correlation between free throw shooting and three-point shooting. Just at least history suggests that in basketball. And the crazy thing is BYU in this game shot 50% from from the three-point line and shot 40% from the free throw line. What is going on? That element of free throw shooting come the postseason, whether it's the Big 12 tournament or more importantly, the NCAA tournament, that could be a massive glaring issue that could cost BYU dearly if it does not get rectified. I've asked Kevin Young about it, and he says it's not a mental thing. Players will insist it's all about having confidence when you step up to the line. I get all that, but you can't. What was it? Was it 6 of 15? Yeah, 6 of 15 at the charity stripe. That is abysmal. That number needs to come up in a significant way. It should be 12 of 15 at the very worst in my mind. I might be a little bit of an old head because free throws back in my era of my brief basketball playing career were like a critical cog. Like you practice them every single day after practice, but nonetheless, it doesn't make sense to me, but somehow, some way, BYU shoots lights out from the three-point line, but in equal measure struggles mightily from the free throw line. Now, I will also acknowledge that there have been games of late that BYU has been fairly good at the free throw line. It's crazy to think that Fousseyni Traore, in my mind, might be the most clutch free throw shooter BYU has, but even then, it's a risky bet to think who might be able to step to the line. I know that Richie made those two critical ones to win the Arizona game, but it's something that BYU has to find a way to make a consistent element of this team because in the postseason, points come at a premium, and especially at the charity stripe, you've got to garner as many as you can. Now, that all being said, solid workmanlike win for BYU. They scored 91 points. Second straight game in Arizona, they've gone over 90 points. You take all that. Kevin Young did say after the Arizona game that this team was emotionally and physically drained, and for good reason. They put their heart and soul into that game to get the win over Arizona, and I think it was very clear that this team struggled a bit with that tonight. They didn't have at points, I would say the same fire, the same, I don't know what you want to call it, the same gumption, use whatever adjective or superlative you want. But the nice part is they handled their business. Yes, Arizona State is severely depleted. They had five rotation pieces, scholarship players available for this game. They kicked their best player, their leading scorer off the team this past weekend. Their star young big man, Jaden Quaintance, left last game in the arena on crutches and didn't play in this one. Alston was sick and wasn't able to play, and he'd been a really impressive offensive force over the past 6 games for ASU. So they were severely depleted, and I will give Bobby Hurley's squad credit because they fought BYU, and it was interesting to watch them hang in there with BYU. But BYU got the win all the same. And that's the biggest thing right now with this BYU squad is just keep winning. That they have a chance. It's an outside chance, but they could finish as high as the number 3 seed going into the Big 12 tournament. That game less than a week away now against Iowa State in Ames, that is going to be, at least on paper, for the number 4 seed at minimum, in Kansas City. And that's a double bye. That gets you 2 rounds into the tournament before you have to take part in the action. Pretty impressive, I think, for BYU. And I'm a guy, I'd like to see BYU win another conference title in my lifespan. It's been 24 years. It was 2001, the last time BYU won a conference title. For example, 2001, yours truly was a 9th grader. Now I'm a 38-year-old dad of 3. Crazy things. But yeah, the nice part is a couple of you pointing this out. 5 straight. Gotta love it. Work on the free throws that comes from Devin. I think Ashton Ellsworth said a similar thing. 5-game win streak. Let's go. Yeah, it's nice to see BYU get that victory because it's a game you had to have. If you lose that type of a game, there's massive alarm bells going off about BYU and their chances in the postseason. It was a easy game to go into and kind of look beyond the mark. West Virginia is coming to Provo on Saturday night. That is a tougher game. And as I mentioned, you have that big showdown against Iowa State in less than a week's time. A severely depleted Arizona State team, could have had you thinking, you know what, let's look past this. But to BYU's credit, even though they had some lulls in this game and allowed Arizona State to hang around for long stretches, only a 10-point margin of victory, even though it feels like it was a bigger margin of victory. It was a solid workmanlike effort. And yes, it's a 5-game win streak. Swing Sam, let's see if we can throw this up here. I'll throw this up. It says final 4 appearance on the line. You knocked down 2 free throws to win. Who do you trust to knock down a pair in that situation? Saunders and Foose, maybe the only ones. Yeah, those are the 2 I would be sending to the line. Savvy. I don't know. I do not know what to make of the free throw woes that BYU has. It's absolutely crazy to look at. Like I said, a 50% shooting performance from the 3-point line, which is in basketball, it's the hardest shot because it's the longest shot on the court. But then at the free throw line, when you have literally nobody guarding you, you shoot 40%. Man, it's weird. With Farrow says West Virginia has the 2nd best defense in the Big 12. I think Houston is first. They're up there. I think they might be 3rd. They've been kind of jostling position. I know Houston, they're far and away the best defensive team in the Big 12, maybe the entire country, but West Virginia is going to test BYU. And a guy like Javon Small, who BYU balled up pretty effectively there in Morgantown, he will obviously be a guy that BYU needs to lock up. Chad said that was a prison yard pickup game. Yeah, Chad, I still don't know. We got double technicals in this game, and it looked like, and you guys know me, I'm a fairly BYU partisan host here, but how do you, what appeared to me, throw a punch and not get a flagrant 2 foul, and then in some way, Trevin Nell gets a technical foul in the ensuing fracas? That part I didn't get. Blind Man, ASU played like they had nothing to lose. Well, yeah, when you're throwing punches, they didn't really have anything to lose. It really was an interesting game, and there is a lot for BYU to clean up on. There's just zero doubt about that, and I'm sure that Kevin Young will be digging in, looking at the film. I just really don't know what to do about the free throw stuff outside of guys of their own initiative. We saw Trevin Nell. We saw Yegor Demon a couple of games ago when he struggled. He walked back out on the court after the game ended. It was in Provo and was working on his free throw shooting. And then he had a guy in Jonathan Tavernari come over and talk to him. It's nice to have vets like that, guys who are very good shooters like a JT who can go over and talk to these guys, but there needs to be some personal initiative taken by the BYU players themselves to say, you know what, enough's enough. We have got to be better at the free throw line. I need to work on this myself so I can be that option. Because really, it is Foose and Saunders right now are the 2 guys really that I would trust to go to the line. Nobody else. Not even Trevin Nell, the shot doctor himself. I would not trust him at the free throw line right now. Couple other things that people are saying here. They got the free throw yips. That comes from Jatra. That's not a bad point. Devin, that was a BS technical on Nell. He didn't even do anything. I kind of got to agree. I just don't know how he got a technical there. Ashton Ellsworth, Jaeger struggled and Cannon struggled. It makes me worried as well as our defense looked rough. Here's the deal. What I like is that Jaeger and Cannon, yes, they have games that they don't look great, but they typically respond with pretty strong performances, and I'm expecting that against West Virginia. They'll be playing in the Marriott Center. They're going to have the home crowd behind them. As I said earlier, You had a guy like Kevin Young say that they were emotionally spent and physically drained after that grueling win over Arizona, and it showed up in this game. So it's nice to see BYU handle their business. Our good friend Scott Dunn. Okay, I'll throw this up here for Scott. BYU is not losing to West Virginia and Utah at home. Well, they better not, because you lose those games, it's going to be a pretty interesting Big 12 tournament, because all that you're looking at and saying, okay, what's going on? Landrick, Hope Hall is doing well after that slash. Yeah, there were some seedy elements to that game. ASU, as we said earlier, played like they had nothing to lose, and they were getting fairly physical and feisty. So, swing savvy. Jaeger with 2 points and 8 assists, doing his best Ben Simmons impression. Okay, I'll give you that one. That one's pretty good. Yeah, Tim Eddington, Jaeger's plays, or Tio's turnovers are a result of him playing aggressive and making plays. He's also had 8 assists in the last 2 games, even with the added turnovers. We are better when he's aggressive. I agree, Tim. That's a great point by you. He needs to be aggressive. Go to the rack, and yes, he's going to turn over the ball a little bit more, but you will always take, I guess, those turnovers that come from the aggression versus being too timid out there on the court. And he mentions he will clean it up. I agree. Yeah. So I look at this. Utah got absolutely boat raced by Arizona. That's a program that's in turmoil right now. They already fired Craig Smith. So I don't know what to expect from Utah down the stretch here. So we'll see what happens. Christopher Williams brings up a very good point. It seemed like the rotation was tightened a bit tonight. I do wonder about that. Let's see. I don't see minutes here, actually. So the rotation shows a bigger disparity, at least in terms of the box score. I don't see minutes yet. I haven't seen that updated yet. But the thing is, I think that the rotation, it may go up and down depending on the game. Kevin Young is a pretty smart coach about game plans and understanding, okay, they have a shorter bench, speaking of, frankly, no bench that Arizona State had. Well, maybe we can tighten a little bit, not put so much mileage on these guys. And that's one of those things to monitor here. So, yeah, very interesting, but BYU has plenty to work on, most notably those free throws. They will have to clean that up as they get ready for West Virginia. And the nice part is come back home, rest up, get some practice in, and then obviously 18,000 of us will be out there at the Marriott Center on Saturday night watching them take on the West Virginia Mountaineers, and obviously we'll have plenty of coverage in the lead up to that game. But as always, we'll call it a night here on this postcast edition of the show. Coming up on tomorrow's full edition of the podcast, BYU spring football. Yes, it's here. It's February. I get all that, but it's a full edition talking all things Big 12 football, BYU football in particular. Okay, Scott, you're just trying to pander to me. Jake with the best listen when it comes to BYU sports. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. With Pharaoh, I should do a crossover with Mountaineer Paul for basketball. We'll see what we can do. It's going to be interesting to see if we can get that locked in. We'll be working on that. But Devin, thanks, Jake. Love the show. Love you, all that. Ashton, love you, Jake. This show is awesome. Appreciate all that. Swing Savvy, real quick. Burgess side, even if it him at this point, any assistants on our staff that have previous connections to Utah? None that I know of. Burgess obviously played there. That's the only connection that I am aware of. But I'll just say this. Insider tidbit. Chris Burgess, not an option for the head coaching position at Utah right now. They have guys like Johnny Bryant. They've got Andre Miller. I think the odds-on favorite right now is Alex Jensen for that Utah job. I think that Chris Burgess is down that list a bit, and it would take those guys passing on that job for him to get a look at it. But we'll leave it there for tonight. But as always, appreciate all of your guys' support. You guys are the absolute best. Thank you for being everydayers with us here. And of course, we'll be back with you guys again tomorrow in a full edition of Locked On Cougars.